So I wanted to thank the CWSD folks, in particular Katie and Brenda and Shane, for inviting EPA once again to the Watershed Forums. We enjoyed last year's session in March and years past, as well as the get on the bus tours, and look forward to collaborating much into the future. So I was asked to describe EPA's new story map for the Carson River Mercury Superfund site. So let's navigate the river together. So this is an awesome community involvement tool that gives you, the public, the power to look up and map data, as well as looking up facts relating to the site. We published this back in September 2020 with significant assistance from our colleagues at Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, or NDEP, and our GIS, or Geographic Information Systems Center staff, to provide local level information about the site. I'd like to provide a brief background about the StoryMap project, the context to the Superfund site, and where we are now. I'll share a brief demo with you, and you should have a link embedded in the PowerPoint, but otherwise we can share a copy of the URL for you to be able to launch it. I wanted to draw particular attention to the Esri GeoPlatform system, which is kind of the heart of the document, the Map Explorer function on one of the tabs where the public-facing data resides. So this is a powerful web mapping tool. It harnesses more than 40 years of data collected by multiple agency sources. Allows one to map one's property or where a project falls relative to the Superfund site footprint, and that may be for your own peace of mind, or if you're concerned and want sampling to be considered. Caveat emptor: the maps represent our best guess as to where the mercury, sometimes arsenic and lead contamination, has come to be after 140 years of it being released. So our maps are not definitive. They're based on a number and type of samples collected from an individual area. Sometimes our colleagues at NDEP may advise the need to collect additional samples depending on the use and location and any questions at hand. So I'll provide a brief history about our mapping project, including the GIS development beginnings. This was one of the first generation GIS efforts at EPA. Back in 1993, the project manager, Sean Hogan, and our civil investigator, Steve Simononik, used this cutting edge development with the goal of co-locating environmental, topographical, and archaeological data. And it yielded some great geodata for this tool to spatially assess mercury trends in the environment. Unfortunately, the investigation didn't yield much in terms of responsible parties to help pay for the studies and clean up yet. So fast forwarding to 2013, we had looked for the data on EPA's GIS servers, but it was somehow misplaced. So we located a bunch of 5¼ inch floppy disks, if anybody remembers those, and painstakingly repopulated the geodatabase with the historical data up through the present. So I picked up the project then and initiated the remedial investigation studies for the operable Unit 2 area that I'll describe briefly, and made calls for additional environmental data from a variety of agencies and sources associated with the Carson River Mercury Site. So we agreed that the goal was to readily share this data for transparency, and now represents something like 52 data sets, including all the metadata and quality assurance associated with those layers. And there are more than 30,000 data points from over 800 unique locations. So why a story map? Well, our feeling was this is a great outreach tool to explain the site data and context for the maps, including things like the legends, the symbologies, and so forth, rather than just issuing these maps, um, posting them on the website, and letting people struggle through them. We felt like this provides some great background and basis for people to understand it. So without further ado, we'll run a demo. And we launched this from the EPA site profile page for the Carson River site. So this first view you can get to, we'll share the URL for it. This is our overview of the Carson River site. And then if you look down here, there's a link that I click on, and it sends us to the Carson River story map. So we'll navigate this together. I am getting started with the green button, and then across the top of the screen you can see a number of drop-down menus, including the site overview, site address, case studies, map explorer, and additional resources. So the way that we organized this site was, again, with the idea of trying to give as much background as we could about the maps, that people could have the context and history as they also view the maps and have a better understanding of the data collected. So this site overview takes advantage of some wonderful photographs we located through archives, and here's an image of the Calpan mill in Virginia City. We have a narrative that goes along with the map as it loads on the right side of the screen, and you get a feel for the extent of the site. It's truly one of the larger Superfund sites in the country, extending over 5 counties, 330 square miles, and the river stretch alone is more than 130 miles. So having maps is a terrific tool for us. So you get a feel for where we're talking about and a background about how the mercury was introduced to the site. Mercury was imported from California to the tune of 14 million pounds and released into the drainages around the mill sites, which you see jumping up on the screen now. There were more than 200 mill sites represented by these blue triangles up and around the Virginia City, Gold Hill areas, up Gold Creek and 6 Mile Canyon creeks, and the Comstock lode. So the mercury was used to amalgamate the gold and silver, and then it was burned off or retorted. But a lot of the mercury got into the drainages, and that's where we have the problem here 104 years later. So more background about the context and the use of the mercury and ideas of how it got into the river. There were mills also up in the Brunswick Canyon area, as well as some in the Washoe Lake area. So up on the screen now you can see the 2 boxes representing where the sources of the mercury occurred, the releases. So by and large, the most was around Virginia City, Dayton areas, but there were some mills around the Washoe Lake area. And so just some background about where these all are, and messages about not eating the fish. These are some of the most heavily contaminated fish in the world with mercury. So it's really important to get these messages out in English and Spanish. And we're working on additional advisories and communications about that. And we also share messages about sampling before construction activities if properties are in the footprint of the site. So we provide some background about EPA's jargon. Operable Unit 1 is the source area that I described previously, where all the mill sites were located. And then some context about some of the ongoing sampling and improvements of techniques to collect those samples have been. And then we provide background about the river stretch of the site, the floodplain, river and wildlife, where Operable Unit 2 is located and where we have a lot of current work happening. I'll touch on a little bit about our plans. So some ideas of the field work that we've done in the past, as well as future plans about the data at the site. So if you look at the next tab over, address lookup quickly, say I live over on Andrea Way in Dayton, and I want to know if I'm in the Superfund site, and click on this address lookup tool button, type in Andrea Way. There's one in Fernley, but we want to look at the one in Dayton. And it tells me your search area falls outside the boundaries of the Carson River site. So I want to point out that this is not entirely fallible, but it gives you a pretty good idea whether you're actually located within the boundaries of what we've defined as the site. But if we were to zoom in here into the Dayton area and onto Andrea Way, you can see that it's surrounded by a lot of brown area, which represents the Operable Unit 1 boundaries. And if I lived on the lower end of Andrea Way, I might have more questions. So this is one of the reasons why we encourage our public to reach out to NDEP, our partners in investigations, to look at the data and look at other investigations that have happened around the area and the topography and history before making a definitive decision as to whether that property is safe. So, you know, soils can be moved around, things can happen over time and change, you know, the understanding about the site. So that's just a nice tool to take a look at. We have case studies that talk about some of the subdivision work that's occurred in the basin, some of the studies about the contaminated fish, and then some of the soil sampling activities that we've done to help refine our techniques and use real-time detectors to locate mercury, arsenic, and lead, for example. This next tab, the Map Explorer, is really the heart of our Geographic Information Systems, or GIS database. We also refer to this as GeoPlatform, and the Map Explorer contains all this data that we have. So it can be a little intimidating when you look at it the first time. You know, there are more than 30,000 data points representing something like 800 unique locations, and you know, this spans over 40 years of data collection. So it's a lot of information. On the left side of the screen, you can see the color-coded legend of the different sample types collected. And if you were to zero in on specific areas of the site, I'll show you where we did the tribal risk assessment work at the Fallon Paiute Shoshone Reservation. You know, we can actually look at some of the data. I point at a spot, and I see that there are mercury compounds. If I click on the arrow, then I see that it's a water sample with methyl mercury, and we have the units, nanograms per liter, and the result down below at 2.3, which is really low. It's below background, and by and large, with the Fallon Paiute Shoshone Reservation, we did not find results above background except in the surface waters. So that was some good news. And if we close out that point and back out, look at other locations along the river, for example, at the upper stretch of the river around Dayton, we zero in and can take a look at the Brunswick Canyon area. There's a mill site, former mill site, referred to as Eureka Mill, and a kindly kayaker informed us about some construction activity on the banks of the river at this property last year, and that was certainly of interest to NDEP and EPA's Clean Water Act and the Superfund programs to take a look at the data and the activity going on in the property, where we look at the results and we see there's mercury in soil at 3,200 parts per million. And as a reference, EPA's cleanup level for the operable Unit 1 area is 80 parts per million, so quite a bit higher, and certainly a powerful tool for us to all be on the same page and understand details about that property. So again, some great tools here. We encourage you to explore, and you have specific areas that you're interested in at the site, feel free to call us and ask more questions about the resource. And then we have the information here, including links for you to explore. And finally, I wanted to share an update about the status of cleanup investigations at the Carson River Mercury Superfund site. We're proud to announce the proposed plan for Operable Unit 2, which is EPA's interim plan to address mercury in the river, floodplain, and biota, coming up this spring. So if you would, please share your email address with us so that we can make sure to get you a copy of the proposed plan fact sheet, which announces the formal public comment period and describes the alternatives or cleanup ideas we considered, along with our preferred cleanup plan before we make a decision after considering everybody's comments. So my contact information's on this slide. Certainly, if you have any questions about the site, please get a hold of me, and I can refer you if I can't answer the question. And then we have additional resources on our webpage. So again, thank you very much for your interest, and I look forward to talking with you.